Hello, everyone. Happy Friday, which is when I am going live recording this. This is also going to serve as an episode of Emerge, the health podcast for busy, high performing women. I wanted to jump in and just share inside of our group and also on the podcast. And this is something I've been talking about in my private group with my clients as well. This last week is, for me, Thanksgiving kind of snuck up on me. So it's next week. And, I was going to talk about stress and kind of family dynamics, but I thought this might be a little more valuable, which is to talk about our, relationship to food around the holidays and really making a plan. Because when we fail to plan, we essentially plan to fail. And I've got a group of women that have been working really hard through my non-gimmick, what I call non-gimmicky weight loss program. And so, part of that is they're in a place where their diet looks really differently from what it probably used to. And, they're losing weight and they're having success and they're feeling great. One woman shared today, she's down, 24 pounds in about 9 weeks, which is awesome and amazing. And she's doing so great. And we've got this holiday coming up, right? Which throws at us, stuff that maybe we don't have around all the time, and maybe there's emotional connection to what we're eating, and there's this time with family and with friends and with gathering and like all this great stuff going on. And it can also be a little daunting, I think, for a lot of people, especially if you are trying to do something that is outside the norm of American society is what I'm speaking into. But even I know we have listeners in Europe and around, even in this group where I'm going live as well, where there's like this, we can be the weird person, right? So let's just put it that way. And I wanted to start this off by sharing, a story. I've shared this before. It's been about a year since I've talked about it, but my own story around like the worst Thanksgiving that I ever had. And worse from the standpoint of like how badly I did my body in terms of what I ate and then what I did afterwards. And, I've shared, I went to chiropractic school in the South. And so I was in Georgia. I got invited home by my roommate who was a Georgia girl. She was a Southern belle. And, she just warned me before we go. She's like, yeah, Southerners like eat really differently from you. I was like, I know, I'm weird from everyone already. By 20, I was off of dairy and gluten and kind of doing a lot of things that were really different anyways. But we do this thing. We had 2 dinners to go to, and I felt like death, right? I ate all the things. It was impolite to not. And, our plan, what we planned to do was, to like do ourselves in and then the next day start marathon training. And so we had a 10-mile run scheduled. And after that, we were going to start a 3-day juice cleanse. And, most of you are probably older than me, but you can listen to this and like our thought process was like probably the majority of, of our culture and society, but it was so backwards. I spent most of the night in the bathroom, not sure which end something was going to come out of because I'd eaten a bunch of stuff I just wasn't used to. My body didn't like, not good for you, all that stuff. I was dehydrated, tired, like had a terrible headache. We went for our run. I felt like death the entire time, but we did it. And then we drove back to Atlanta from her home that was a couple hours away and got these gallon jugs of Arden's Garden, juice that was going to be what we consumed for the next 3 days. And I, about 24 hours into that, was standing in my kitchen, just like shaking, like, oh my gosh, I need some food. So there's a lot to be learned here. And my point in sharing that is not like, I mean, there's a lot backwards that we can dive into and talk about, but I just want you all to think about how we go about approaching holidays and gatherings. Like we attach so much stuff to food in our culture and society, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but we use it as excuses to, overeat or to eat stuff we don't normally eat. It's like in the US, Thanksgiving is like the laziest holiday in the world. Everyone plans to like wear their sweatpants and sit in the recliner and, go in the turkey coma and all this stuff. And if that's you and you find joy in that, great. I'm not here to tell anyone to do anything differently. And we're going to talk about how to really approach this and plan this in a way where you feel empowered and not disempowered by what you're doing, not like, sitting on the hugging the porcelain toilet all night while you're, trying to get rid of all the stuff that you put into your body. And what I really want to share around this is, how we go. Like the first thing is you just have to decide what you're going to do. Like, are you going to make the choice and have it really truly be a choice to wear the sweatpants and, be in the turkey coma and all that stuff? Are you going to choose to, one of my clients this morning on our group call, she's kind of early in this process, and so she hasn't really taken stuff out of her diet yet. And she was like, I'm really just gonna take on like not overeating. And I was like, great, awesome. And I said, so how are you going to do that? And she was like, I haven't gotten that far. I haven't looked at that, Dr. Alex. And I was like, well, let's talk about it. And so then you need to take the plan far enough to not just have an idea of what you're going to do, but know tangibly, like, here's how I'm going to do this. So, some of her ideas were to use a smaller plate. That's a great way to make sure you don't overeat, not give herself, seconds, just have one serving of each thing. Like, both great ideas. So those are the two things that she's going to take on. I have other clients that are further into the process, and they're like, I don't really want to eat the stuff, so I'm just going to have turkey and vegetables. And I'm like, great, like that works for you, and that's awesome. My personal thing, like I said, by the time I actually cooked my own Thanksgiving dinner, which was when I was in my 30s, somehow I put it off that long, but I had been gluten-free and dairy-free and, mostly sugar-free for probably 12 years. And so it wasn't even an option to make some of the, what we consider normal stuff for me. I was looking for alternatives, and, I made green bean casserole with cashew cheese and instead of like cream and all this stuff. And so I did the whole dinner that way. For others, maybe you just pick one dish, like one thing that you can take with you if you're going somewhere, or one thing that you feel really good about what's in it and that you eat. And, you have that option, especially if you're new to, maybe trying something new, like being gluten-free or dairy-free, or those are kind of like bigger things that tend to come up. But, my point is to have like something that you feel good about eating in a good way, not in the like, oh my gosh, this tastes so good, I want to eat the whole thing, but in the sense of it's clean and, it's fueling your body in a good way. I'm kind of all over the place with this, but you get the idea. My point is, there's no like magical formula. We want to be able to enjoy our holiday. Absolutely. There's a lot that's tied to the significance of time with family and the coming together and the, being grateful and thankful and all of that. And we attach a lot of that to food, but we also don't really have to. You can certainly take the approach of, having more emphasis and focus on those relationships and that time and, being off and of work and, life and all that stuff, and just being able to relax. Like, maybe one of your plans or your goals is to like bring some new tradition or new family experience in that's not centered around food. Not, one of my favorite things to do is a morning ski, like as long as it's not cold enough. I'm a bit of a fair weather skier, but go cross country skiing, while the turkey's in the oven or whatever, and move my body in some way, because then I feel, I'm much more relaxed and just like feel better about eating and all that stuff, through the day, and having it be a little bit different schedule from what I do. The other is to not vary that at all. I had another client share that, there's a dish she always makes because her grandmother made it and her mom made it. And, looking down at just how things are passed on, right? But her kids actually hate it. And it's a bunch of stuff that she can't, I won't say she can't. She can eat whatever she wants, but she's not eating right now in this process and commitment she's made to lose some weight. And so, she was like, I'm just not making it this year because my kids hate it. And it's just my husband and I who eat it. So why not? And I love that. We have the ability to either build on traditions that are passed down or to change them. Sometimes we just have to give ourselves permission to do that and to, have it be okay and to move the needle. There's so much, especially with diet and nutrition and what's in our food, especially in the US. I interviewed, this is going to be out kind of just before the new year starts, but I had the second dude on the podcast. We did our interview this week. It'll be out in a couple of weeks, but he's from Ireland and he lived in the US for a year. And he, in our talking, just shared, like, the US in general, we are much more screwed up in terms of what's allowed in our food. The FDA regulations don't really do a lot to protect us. They're more protecting like companies that make a lot off of putting really crappy stuff in our food. That's just reality. And, he's seen it from living here and living in Europe. I lived in Europe for a period as well and can totally agree with that. And it's up to us to start pushing that needle and deciding what's okay, and even moving beyond having such an attachment to food as a staple of a holiday. I'm not saying don't enjoy yourself. I'm not saying don't have the slice of pie. I'm saying giving yourself some empowerment and freedom, and maybe give your family the gift of focusing on the finer points that aren't all about the meal. I think what the meal represents is like that coming together and doing something together, and, a celebration and sharing with each other, and, just being in that environment. And I think we can also create it without food. It just requires some creativity. So I would love to hear any ideas any of you have on how to do that, and what like non-food things you really love. Like, my husband hates board games, but the rest of us really like them. So, I love having like family game nights and using like that time to come together in that way. I sometimes the act of just like preparing something, and, having my son help, or whatever it is. And like, that's centered around food often, but it doesn't have to be. It could be decorating the house. It could be, doing an activity together that's outside. There's so many different things that we can do that kind of brings that togetherness and celebration and gratitude in, that doesn't necessarily have to do with food. Circling back to the food though, here's kind of what I've been laying out for people in thinking about this, because I'm big on having freedom around food, not necessarily saying like freedom eating whatever the heck you want, though it can mean that. You want to look at, I heard someone say this once, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Freedom means you can see the chocolate cake, or let's go with pumpkin pie because we're going into Thanksgiving. You can see the pumpkin pie and you can make the choice not to eat it. And it's not like you're, having to use some sort of willpower to say no to the pumpkin pie or yes to the pumpkin pie. And there's just a total freedom of choice, not based on justifications, or, like, oh, I'm going to work out a little extra for this. Like, none of that conversation comes in. It's just like, I choose this or I choose this. And that's like where it ends. So that's what true freedom is. Most of us don't live there. Let's just be honest. But in looking at how you're going to approach the holiday and what you want to do, I want you to come at it with the freedom of choice. And, maybe you've got your whole meal planned and I'm too late sharing this with you, and that's fine. Like, you can think about this for Christmas or Easter or next year, or like whatever it is. But, approaching it as like, I'm going to choose to eat everything and do what I always do, or I'm going to choose to like I said, try one new thing, or maybe make a dish I know I can eat, or I feel really good about, or maybe I take on a whole new recipe, or change something about what's been passed on for generations and I know is super unhealthy. Or, I choose the pie or not, or I choose the smaller plate, or I choose the big plate. Like, the point is, we come at it with some freedom, and we're really clear on the choice we're making, and we're just centered in ourselves about it, so that we're not running the guilt and the feeling like we have to go start marathon training the next day, or do a juice cleanse, or any of that crap that actually really is more stress on the body and just causes more problems rather than helping. But that's a different conversation. So that's number one. And the second thing is, have a plan for what happens after. I think so many of us use Thanksgiving as like the launch into, and we've had less of this since, the whole pandemic experience. But I remember one year my husband and I had like 6 holiday parties. It might have been 7. So there was like literally some 1 to 2 things every week where like food was different, and, we were having to get dressed up and like go do all this stuff. And we have less of that now. But so many of us use like Thanksgiving is the launch into, I'm just gonna, everything goes out the window for the next 6 weeks, and then I make a really terrible New Year's resolution. We're going to talk more about that in the next month. And like push too hard, and everything falls apart again. But we kind of use this window as like a free for all, rather than having a plan for what happens in between, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Suddenly, like, all the sweets are there and yada, yada, yada. So, the point is to have a plan. Like, if your plan is going to be to let it all go during that time period because you've been eating really well and doing really great all year, which I would encourage everyone to do, awesome, go for it. If that's not really what you want to do, and you are wanting to lose weight, or, feel good about your body, and feel healthy and energetic and all this stuff, like, we probably aren't going to do that, right? So, you just need to decide, are you going to give yourself the weekend? Are you going to, what's your plan going to be for after? It's essentially what I'm trying to say. And I would highly recommend that it does not involve a juice cleanse, or starting to train for a marathon, or, any other kind of crazy, really hard stuff. We have to do things incrementally and in little bits, so that they're sustainable and create actual change, rather than, just throwing your body from one extreme to the other, which is what I did, and was a hugely negative experience on multiple levels, including that my body didn't like it. So I'd written some notes on this, and just to reiterate, we have step one is just making a plan. And I'm not here to tell you what your plan should be. You need to decide what works for you, for your family, for your goals, for, whatever's influencing that part of your life, where you're going to be, all of that. Like, decide what's going to work for you. And we shared lots of examples of what that could be. The second thing, I can't remember anything these days, so is, bringing some focus to the non-food aspects of the holiday that, can also matter and can also have you really have an enjoyable time. Like, putting some emphasis on not food. We all need to do more with this, I would argue. We just do. Let's just leave it at that. And then the third is to both know how you're going to do it. So, like, getting beyond, I'm just going to eat less, making it really specific, tangible, like a way that you know that you're going to succeed at that. And then kind of the part B of that, have a plan for how you're going to, come out of the holidays. That's what I guess I would say there. Hopefully this all makes sense. I know we've got a couple people who've been on live, so I'm going to just double check, see if we have any comments or anything. That doesn't look like it, but I would, for those of you who are watching this in a live setting, I would love to hear, like, what are some of your ideas for non-food focused holiday activities? What is your plan? What's something new maybe you're going to try? What choices are you going to make? How are you going to be empowered in what you do with food around the holiday? And then, just share in the comments, or you can send me a message. And if you're listening on the podcast later, because I'm in holiday prep, we're kind of killing two birds with one stone here, but send me an email or reach out. All that stuff's in the show notes. So I would love to engage with people and just have more ideas. Like, I'm really just trying to compile ideas for everybody. So just in kind of wrapping this up, like, we had, I think, 4 or 5 people, well, like 10 total this week that I've talked to. And, their plans range from anywhere from, I'm really not going to alter what I'm doing, and I'm just going to focus on, like, my protein and my veggies and getting enough of that. We've got, like, I'm going to come a little bit out and maybe have like a sliver of the pie, but, mostly adhere to what I've been doing and feel good about it. And they all have a plan for what happens after, right? And then we've got, I'm just going to practice moderation. And, like, that's a good first step. And I'm going to pick a smaller plate and only take one serving of each thing. And others are, experimenting with, well, my dessert, because I haven't really been having much that sugar, is like sweet potatoes with some cinnamon and some butter on it. Like, sounds amazing to me. It's almost like pumpkin pie if you put the right spices on it, right? So everyone's got, like, their own level of where they're at, and each of you is going to have their own level of where you're at. My point with this is more, we do so much on autopilot and following the crowd and just, doing what everybody else does, or failing to plan, really. And so, I just encourage you to think about your family dynamics, your, holiday life, the things you love about it, the things you maybe don't love about it, and come up with a plan that's going to really have you have an enjoyable beginning to the holiday season here in the US, and, and plan for what happens in between. And I'm going to help with that, in terms of what we're going to launch in December inside of the Facebook group that I run, the big one. So look for that, because that will be coming out kind of next week as we get into the holidays, so you can start prepping for it. So I hope this helps serve you all. Again, I would love to hear from you with what your plans are, what your ideas are, and how you're going to help hold yourself accountable, and how you're actually going to achieve those things. And if anyone needs help with that, please reach out, because I'm happy to, just mostly spitball ideas with you and help you get to where that works. So again, hope this serves you all. Happy Thanksgiving for those who are in the US. And, if you're not, you're still moving into the holiday time. So I'd just say happy holidays. Let's enjoy ourselves and give ourselves grace and permission and freedom to really make choices that empower us, rather than leave us, hugging the bathroom toilet and feeling like we have to start marathon training the next day. There we go. All right. We will see you all after Thanksgiving.